Mr. Toastmaster. Hello, fellow Toastmasters. Maybe I'm cursed. We're in a pandemic, and I'm optimistic. Not totally, but I think I'm just naturally an optimistic person. So I'm forced to think about what are the pluses to what's going on right now. And believe it or not, without much effort, I came up with 5 of it. First, an example earlier today, 2 times at least, when I was washing my hands, I went through my normal routine, walked away from the faucet, realized, damn it, I didn't wash for 20 seconds. I went back, finished washing my hands, did it the proper way, or at least as we're told is the proper way, as close as I'm able to, and felt like, okay, I'm making progress. So I'm hopeful that I'm not the only one that's a better hand washer now than I was a few weeks ago, and that maybe, even when the pandemic is over, that we're all slightly or greatly better hand washers. That's a good thing. Speaking of hands, notice when the speech began, I did not shake our Toastmasters hand, and I think this is going to happen more than just in Toastmasters. This old cultural norm that exists in much of the world is going to fade away. I think it's going to happen now. It's not like no one's ever going to shake anybody else's hand ever again, but I really think there's going to be enough occurrences in our lives in the coming weeks and months where someone offers a hand and we're like, hell no, I'm not shaking your hand, that we're going to get used to not shaking each other's hands. I wish I had the solution of what's going to replace the handshake. I'd imagine someone somewhere on social media, maybe on TikTok or on Twitter, will post a video of the best new way to replicate a handshake without actually touching somebody else, and maybe we'll begin to adopt it. I'm optimistic that'll happen because just because for decades and centuries or millennia we've been shaking each other's hands doesn't mean we need to keep doing it. I know how awful of a hand washer myself I used to be. I don't want to think about what the person whose hand I'm shaking, what they were doing prior to becoming a better hand washer. Maybe they're not even a better hand washer today. So I'm optimistic that the handshake will begin to fade away. What else though? Maybe there's bigger things. Here in the state of Minnesota, we recently announced that the schools, K through 12, will be shut down for a couple weeks. And then coming out of that, there's going to be some distance learning, online education for K through 12. I'd imagine that some of these students were doing some of this already, but for others, in some of these school districts, this didn't exist. So they're going to do the best they can in a couple weeks, assuming they're not back in school in 2 weeks, to finish up the school year doing this. Something good is going to come out of this. Whether it's just a part of their education, maybe it becomes a big part, by forcing their educational standards and norms to change through this, there's going to be better ways to educate the kids, and I'm sure a lot of kids will enjoy some of the things that they're doing online and maybe like education more than they do while being in the classroom, depending on how the setting of the classroom has been for them in their school district. So I'm optimistic of that. I don't work a type of job currently where I can work from home, but I know a lot of people have those types of jobs that they thought they could work from home, but the company, the organization, never let them work from home. Suddenly, work from home. And what? We can actually do a pretty good job of this. So maybe more people will have the freedom and flexibility that they desire because the company will realize, okay, this works well enough, let's keep doing this at least somewhat. Maybe some of these companies will adopt a totally new way of thinking and let their employees work from home as much as they want, or work from anywhere, work remotely. And by doing that, people get what I know I want. I imagine more people want the freedom and flexibility to use their time how they want to. If you have someone in their family or kid that you need to attend to, do that, prioritize that, do your work around it. I'm sure there's so many people that it's such a big hassle and a stressor for them in their lives that they can't always do that. So I'm optimistic that that'll be another innovation that comes from this. And I'm sure so many more that I haven't even given a thought to, but those 2 alone, happier people in the workplace or working from home, and slightly or greatly better educated kids, okay, win-win there. What else though? What about the next time we get a big pandemic? or any sort of pandemic, or anything relating to a pandemic. I have been consumed with this pandemic, listening to at least a half a dozen podcasts on it, reading a bunch of articles, and I'm surprised, kind of, that the 1918 Spanish flu and Pittsburgh and St. Louis come up so often. Maybe others have noticed this as well. Pittsburgh held a big parade that apparently helped to cause twice as many people to die in Pittsburgh, whereas St. Louis canceled their parade and they closed their schools earlier. Half as many people died. They flattened the curve in St. Louis back in the early 1900s. Pittsburgh did a terrible job. So we reference that as one of the reasons now why we're doing what we're doing. Great, I'm not glad that happened, but it's good that we have that resource. But what about now? We have this pandemic happening, and each country is handling it differently. And we can see precisely what everyone has done and how it's affected their country, the people that are living there, how many people are getting sick, how many people are dying. We can do this. We can look at all the different countries and decide what was the best, or what were the best few, and we can take that forward. Sure, the next time a pandemic hits, it's not going to be precisely like this one, but at least we'll have those reference points, which will be great for the future of humanity, because I think the data we were using was kind of sparse and perhaps outdated. So that's definitely a good thing there. And this may be a reach, but this is my greatest hope, my greatest optimism for coming out of this pandemic, is that when it ends, we will be able to recognize that perhaps the current leadership of the United States doesn't give much credit to science, math, experts, don't want to listen to the experts, but they were forced to eventually now start to listen to some experts and do what needs to be done to make sure the country isn't in more chaos than it's about to be or currently is. What about with climate change? There's so many people that deny it, and so many others that don't find it urgent. Well, maybe it's not as urgent mentally as a pandemic, as we see right now what's happening in Italy. This is urgent. It's coming for us very soon. That's why we're acting and doing the best we can based on the information we have. But we have experts. We have scientists. We have mathematicians that can calculate what is going to happen to planet Earth, into the oceans, into all these people that are living in places that won't be a place later this century. And we know this. Experts know this. People know this. But we haven't felt a sense of urgency, at least we, meaning the people that can actually get it done. The Paris Climate Accord was a good first step that really I don't think does enough, but I think this pandemic has a chance to be the thing that puts enough nations, enough leaders, enough experts together to actually do something and not set a distant timeline of when it needs to be done. Let's act now, because we know what can happen with something that we can predict, that people smarter than all of us have been studying their whole lives to know what's going to happen. I don't have these answers, but I do know people, I can read about people that do have answers. And we need to respect those people, take their advice, and use it for the future of humanity's best benefit. And I think we can get it done. Mr. Toastmaster?